Welcome to episode 2 of Philosophy Communications podcast titled Shaping Thought for Appliance Service. During each Shaping Thought episode, we explore the industry's brightest and most talented entrepreneurs who are working to define the appliance service industry. Today, I'm here with Todd Daganaar, president of Hometown Hero Appliance Repair with 4 locations in Omaha, Lincoln, Des Moines, and Kansas City. So, if every listener leaves today with one golden nugget or inspiration they can apply to their business, then today was a success. Let's get started. Todd, welcome to Shaping Thought.
Thank you for having me, Jen. I will warn the listeners, you've been threatening to interview me for over a decade, so the bar is set pretty high.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, Todd, we've known each other for like 13 years. I feel like I've seen your leadership just get better and better each year. I remember meeting you and your grandfather Doug, and your Doug, who was skeptical about the changes that were going to be taking place and the growth, but he was supportive that you were the right choice to lead the business. One of the first things you told me, I don't know if you remember this, Todd, but the first thing you told me when we met one night, we were having dinner, and you said, "Jen, I'm 98% honest." And I remember thinking, he's probably the most honest person I've ever met. And we made a joke that we wanted to make t-shirts and start wearing them around the office that said 90% honest, which we haven't done. But anyway, I think it's been a great ride with you, and it's been wonderful to get to know you. I'd love for our listeners to hear your path into the trade. So what made you decide into this dream industry of appliance service?
Well, I know that it's something that everyone wants to get into. You know, when you ask a kindergarten class, they're like police officer, firefighter, and appliance repair. And obviously that's part of the 2%, the 2% that's dishonest, right? I grew up with appliance repair, and my mom was a single parent, and we lived with my grandparents for several years. It happened to coincide with when the business was getting kicked off. And prior to that, my grandfather had worked for another appliance repair company, but I was in the thick of it. You know, it started at the kitchen table, and I remember being in the passenger seat, which I don't think they let kids that age do that anymore. Mm-hmm. But I've got the little notepad, and I'm trying to jot things down while my grandma repeats them. She's on the giant cell phone, they had back in the day. She even had like a little notepad that suction cupped onto the windshield, and it was terrifying because she'd be going 50 miles down the road, taking notes on the phone. Like, she literally did not have, not even a hand, not a part of her arm on the wheel.
Hilarious. So
if one of the techs back then thought it looked like a 6-year-old took their service call, it may have been because that's exactly what happened. I grew up around it. From there, I guess it was inescapable destiny. I definitely tried to buck it off. I went to college for business administration. I changed courses and made everybody mad. I got a degree in religious studies, and I somehow still ended up administering a business. But I wasn't ready to run off to grad school in another state, and I was working in the business. I was managing our parts department, and my grandmother got ill and they needed help, and I stepped up, and gradually as I started learning how to do all these jobs, I'm like, I actually kind of like this, and I like that it's challenging, and I didn't get bored. I was one of those gifted students in school that was always bored to tears in class, and both the business side of things, there was always another job to do, always another job to learn. And then the appliance side too, some of it's really straightforward, but a lot of them are puzzles, and I like puzzles. So
it ended up being your calling. As much as you tried not to go into it, it was like a giant 2x4 that kept hitting you and saying, you will go into appliance service.
It definitely feels like it sometimes. Yeah.
Well, you're good at it, that's for sure. So what's your biggest challenge that you've had to deal with? I mean, you've been in business. I mean, the company's been in business 38 years. You have almost 40 employees, these 4 locations. What got you sideways?
Change. Life is full of change, and change kind of sucks. Um, we build things a certain way with certain people, and then they leave. And I've always been, a co-leader kind of person. Like I manage through consensus, and so, when that management team changes, the company changes, right? And I've led the team with my cousin, which ended poorly because we were both very stubborn. And I managed the company with my brother-in-law as well for a number of years, which
Hmm.
ended poorly because we were both very stubborn. And now I manage it with my friend Rico, which hasn't ended poorly yet, despite us both being very stubborn.
It seems to me you have a type, Todd.
Well, I might be the type. Um,
The common denominator. Yeah.
but those transitions are really difficult, and not to mention the endless cast of minor characters that move through, and you know, change is a constant. And when somebody does move on, you have to figure out how to fill that spot. And certain aspects still end up a little bit empty, right? And you have to adjust. Um, but if you want to get something done that matters, you're going to have to be a little bit stubborn and kind of an asshole at times. I think. I don't know. It's worked for me.
Well, so when it comes to an obstacle, can you give the listeners an example of what's a pressing obstacle that you're dealing with right now?
Yeah. Um, Most immediately, we lost our office administrator who had been here for quite a number of years. She did a lot of thankless work, and now I'm the thankless one. But it's also kind of fun because you get an opportunity to really look at these things that people have been doing for years and go, there's got to be a better way to do this. And it is kind of fun when you get to improve something, you get to remove friction. If it is a mindless task, you can either find something to do it, build something, or find a way to speed it up. Certainly, AI has been a help there because I'm not a coder by background, but it is great for some of those mindless things. If you go to document an SOP and you find, okay, this takes forever, it feels pointless, and if I offered it up to anybody else on the team to do, nobody would volunteer. That's a great candidate for automation because nobody wants to do it.
So give an example of something that you've automated.
Yeah. So in our business, we have about 150 or so transactions a day, cash, check, credit card, which means across the month we have 3,000 to 4,000 transactions that have to be reconciled. And it kind of boggles my mind that we were doing it manually before
Oh my gosh.
because I would not have been willing to do it myself for all those years. So, we develop tools to help with that, and it goes from, I don't know, hours a week to, under an hour a week. And it's perfect because nobody wants to do that. And the more of that junk we can remove from our staff, the more they can focus on what they're really good at, what they enjoy.
Hmm.
Like that, what's that Japanese word, like ikigai or something?
Hmm.
That intersection of what you love and what you're good at and what people are willing to pay for.
Hmm.
So, anyway,
So what
uh,
advice, it sounds like you're able to spot the opportunity of where some automation might take place. You know, how have you done that? Do you have a meeting? Do you sit back? How do you identify those opportunities to automate?
well, first you have to do the task. um, because we see, a lot of people are out there trying to solve problems that other people have and they don't fully understand them. So first you have to do it the old way, the slow way. You have to take
Hmm.
notes, you have to write down ideas. Like, I think we could try this. You have to accept that most of them are not going to work out. And that's why you're experimenting, and, you know, making mistakes is neither shameful nor something to be avoided. Um, Experimentation is what it takes in order to find new ways to do things. And when you're bucking the way that things have been done, you are going to fail more often than you're going to succeed. Like there's a reason they've been done that way, right?
How do you feel about
But you have to keep going. How do I feel about failure?
Yeah.
I love it. It's so fun.
I kind of thought you might. I actually think you kind of might like experimenting and trying and
Yeah.
are you
Well,
being serious? Like, do you actually embrace failure? Or, I mean, I've worked with you a long time, and it feels like you're kind of okay with it in the sense. I mean, you succeed a lot, but it gives you this opportunity to try.
I'm the failure king. Absolutely.
You are the
Uh,
failure king. I don't know if that's totally true, but I see you try things, which is great.
we opened a second location in Omaha about 12 years ago,
Hmm.
and we were going to focus on developing our parts business, like retail part sales. And uh, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but there is this young upstart called Amazon that is absolutely disrupting, industries. So that was a mistake. And we learned a lot about, having two locations is about three times the work of having one location. And after a year or so, there was literally just a day that I was just fed up, beat down. I was like, let's pack it up. Let's pack this stuff up and move it back to the other building where we still had our parts counter. And we subleased it out. It was scary. We were on the hook for a lease. We spent a ton of money, doing something that was completely unproductive. And, ultimately, though, when we fast forward a few years, when we expanded to Lincoln, when we opened, our first, I guess, our second uh, location out in Des Moines, when we did it again in Kansas City, all those lessons from the first time really paid off, right? So they felt like waste at the time, but it was just the cost of tuition. And we said, okay, well, what we're not going to do is we're not going to hire a bunch of people and duplicate everything out there. We're going to centralize what we can. We're not going to duplicate all of our inventory, from the first location because they sell different things out there. And
Right.
and then we did it again. And as the things get proven out, it gets easier. It's still hard, but it gets easier. So, failure is definitely part of the path forward. If you avoid failure, you avoid success.
So true. So what advice do you have for like another appliance servicer? If you would give them, one piece of advice, what would you say to them?
Well, I'd say I hope you're patient because I have a couple.
Okay, let's
But,
hear it.
so not appliance specific, but Mike St. John, who is our business advisor, told me years ago, don't throw a body at a problem. And we had been really guilty of that, especially during really rapid expansion. We're like, okay, well, we need another tech, we need another CSR, we need another this and that. And people are expensive and complicated, and if you can solve a problem without adding another person, do that instead. It'll give you more ability to pay and improve the lives of the people who are there. There's going to be a ton of waste, when you add more people to it. You do have to go through some people to find the diamonds in the rough, but treat that as the break glass in case of fire thing, not the first thing you go to. And the bonus piece of advice is do less warranty work. It's never worth the headache. The money will leak out in all kinds of unexpected ways. It always sounds like a great deal, but if it were such a great deal, everybody else would be doing it and they wouldn't be looking.
That's really interesting. And I wonder, a lot of like maybe up and coming servicers, they take on the warranty work just to have some, you know, bread and butter to lead them through. I wonder if everybody, all these servicers got together and really put their worth around the warranty work. If maybe you have a little bit more power, what do you think about that?
I think it's a fantastic idea in theory, and it's very difficult because just like when we're dealing with the public, um, there's always someone who will do it cheaper.
Right.
And there's always somebody who'd love the opportunity to get in more homes and, but, if we got paid for all the work we did, we'd be rich.
Right. I'm right there with you. I'm in the service business. So
Right?
where do you think appliance service is going? What do you think the future looks like?
Um, we've seen a lot of cycles through the years, and I expect we'll see the same cycles continue to repeat. So a lot of it's driven by the manufacturers, and they compete on price, prices go down, and then they're building junk. So the way that somebody differentiates themselves is they say, well, we're going to build better quality, we're going to have longer warranties. So then they compete on quality and warranties, and prices go up, and then all the prices go up, so they compete on price. So we've seen that cycle repeat indefinitely. Um, the lower end markets, some of the builder grade appliances, I think some of that is increasingly drying up, from a servicer perspective, because parts and labor don't cycle, right? Like they only climb in price. Um, but there will always be a market for repair of expensive and high quality appliances separately, because expensive doesn't always mean high quality.
Right. So what's next in store? What's on your radar for Hometown Hero?
Definitely a focus on quality over quantity. We aren't going to expand our territory unless it unambiguously makes sense. It's good for us, it's good for our employees, it's good for the customers.
Hmm.
We're not chasing volume, we don't want to do more work. We're going to continue to work on building a really strong core of knowledgeable staff, ensure that we don't become a revolving door. We want to be the best place to work, not the first stop, on the way to better things. And we are here to offer careers, not jobs. We're definitely seeing a trend where our trade is more appealing than it used to be because of the looming threat of AI and automation. And we don't think robots will be fixing your refrigerators anytime soon. So it makes it still a really strong career prospect. And I think that will help ease the perpetual technician shortage that's been going on for decades.
Right, that makes sense. I do
Hopefully.
think I I I don't know if it's true, but I do think service is going to become more and more desirable, and more unique. I do think, and I think we might see for the first time, really, that's where, the fees are going to commiserate with that. I think this idea of a $99 trip charge or whatever people might be doing, that mentality is now somebody with a skill set that can't be done by a robot. I would like to see it increase, in terms of people really getting paid for that customer experience and service. So moving to customer experience. So I wanted to talk to you, if you were on the customer side, not the owner side. So take off your owner hat. I want to hear about customer experience that has shaped how you've formulated Hometown Hero. What customer experience resonated with you, and you're like, ah,
Um, it's definitely a challenge, to step away from thinking about, delivering service to receiving it. Um, and I think on both sides of the coin, the key is always something extra. And one of the experiences for me, we had a clogged main sewer line at our house. We've had it a few times. And our basement is filled with undesirable substances and water, and it's all yucky and nasty. And we had this guy out to do a drain cleaning, and his name was Scott. He's very friendly, very nice. He chatted with me the whole time. Honestly, I wanted to go to the other room and sit down and
I was going to say
just.
that probably annoyed you to no end.
I've got a stranger in my house. I don't really like talking to strangers. And he just wanted to talk the whole time, and he showed me, his big industrial like auger that he uses to clean out the drain, and he told me all about it, and he told me, what to look for if I wanted to go pick one up on Marketplace to take care of my plumbing in the future. I'm like,
Okay.
I guess he was trying to tell us that our plumbing was laid out poorly and cleaning it out was going to be a regular experience, which was true. But, it's not like your surgeon usually tells you how to go in and repair your own rotator cuff or something like that.
Right.
And that extra value, to me means that even though I've never ended up cleaning or clearing my own drain, I always call Scott now.
That's awesome. I think that's a great story, and that's a great lesson for people to think about, just to share their knowledge with each other. So
Yeah.
I have a few other questions. I'm curious, Todd, if you could fix any appliance in history, what would it be and why?
I'm not a plumber by trade, but I think Louis XIV's bidet probably would have been
Up
a
there?
pretty interesting one. Yeah. Uh, I don't know. I really I enjoy fixing things that are challenging to fix. So when we don't have enough information or you can't get the original parts, and we have had some really fun projects like that, but I also don't like dealing with asbestos wiring. They weren't worried about mesothelioma in the 1940s.
Yeah.
Um, but there was definitely a golden era of cooking appliances in particular, from like the 40s to the 70s that were just really cool, really well built. They still look and hold up better than the stuff that, was purchased 10 years ago. And I do remember walking through a tour of Graceland and seeing Elvis Presley's like avocado green, I don't even know what to call it. It was kind of like a stove, kind of like a wall oven, kind of like the old Frigidaire flares. But I was like, that's really cool. I want to work on that.
What do you think made those appliances better built or better made? Like,
I don't know. The companies hadn't been acquired by private equity yet.
well, speaking of which, what advice? I mean, you work with, you're one of the top in Bosch and Samsung. You work with Sub-Zero. What advice do you have for a manufacturer?
That there really are pockets of people out there that care about quality,
Right?
and that pocket becomes larger and larger every time somebody has a bad experience. So somebody who had Maytag appliances, through all their golden years, they didn't necessarily know that they had, one of the best machines ever made. They didn't know that
Right.
the enamel on it was 10 times thicker than whatever you'd get. But eventually, when they replaced that, whatever they replaced it with probably gave them a really bad experience that they rebound from, and they want to buy quality, right? Like, it's not always in the budget, but where it makes sense, people want to buy quality. And what we've seen is the opposite. The trend of enshittification and private equity. They come in and they buy the company that has a fantastic name and they hollow it out, and the stuff that they put out, the focus is how can we build this cheaper and sell it for more.
I
And
would agree with that because I've seen that with some of the manufacturers where I feel like sometimes they lose sight of the customer and quality over the profit. And so, which ultimately harms their brand down the road. So I think, I hear what you're saying. If your advice to a manufacturer is to really think about quality, not that we only want this to last 7 years and then they throw it out and bring on a new one. Think about push it. How can this appliance last 14 years and not seven, right?
yeah, because that's the calling card that's going to determine, the referral and repeat business for those brands. You know, somebody who went to, whatever their local appliance dealer is in 2005, and they said, I want to get a Maytag washer because my grandma had one and my mom had one, and, they ran like tanks. The
Right.
machine they got was a Maytag name badge,
Hmm.
and it only took them 5 years to completely sink that brand, after it got purchased. But is that person ever going to buy Maytag again? No, because they've been completely let down, right? So if we're going to play, the game of marketing based on where something's built, I don't have any interest in that. Play a game of how something's built, how
Right.
well,
Yeah.
like build something that can actually last. Crazy idea. I know.
Is the idea. Well, and then I wonder sometimes, can we incentivize companies to build things that last, with breaks or, I'm talking in legislation a little bit, but can you imagine if we lived in a world where legislation was actually rewarding companies for building things that uh, stay out of the garbage
Out of the
pile?
landfill. Yeah.
I mean, what if that was the world we live in? But I'm a dreamer, as you know. So I was thinking the other day, what if you could have dinner with any inventor? Who would you want to have dinner with?
You know, there's plenty of great answers to that. And I don't know. I know Thomas Edison was very prolific, but really, a lot of it was designs that he was stealing from, other smaller creators that were working under him. But still, he was so prolific, it'd be so interesting to know about all the ideas and
Honestly,
designs that didn't make it. Obviously, Tesla, Nikola Tesla would have been a very interesting and eccentric, one. And I'd kind of like to have dinner with him around, the sunset years when he was talking to pigeons. I think it'd be a little more interesting. Who
hmm
knows? Maybe he figured out something that we haven't yet.
is there an appliance that you just can't live without?
Oh, well, I mean, everything we do is presumably useful, but, refrigeration is, a good chunk of the reason, along with fertilizer, that the world is able to sustain the population, right?
Mhm.
Um, and sanitation, after the Roman aqueducts, a nice home washing machine, is probably the next best thing to stopping the spread of dysentery and cholera. Um, but the microwave is probably my most used.
It is.
Yeah,
What about the toaster oven?
and the air fryer too. But
What about the toaster oven? I love the toaster oven. That's my favorite appliance in the house.
my counters are all full.
Are they?
I got a countertop ice machine and an air fryer and a Zojirushi rice cooker and a toaster. I don't have any more counter space. I'm gonna need a new house.
I know. Well, so, okay, last question. If you weren't in appliance service, what would you be doing? I think I might know.
Why do you choose one road instead of the other? Like, I have no idea. There was definitely a time when the plan was I'm going to grad school. I studied Sanskrit and
Well, that's,
Indology for three
I thought
years.
you'd be a spiritual teacher. If you weren't in this, I thought you'd be a spiritual teacher.
I really enjoyed the courses other than the religion part.
I know.
I just liked things that were difficult and contrarian. So I do remember, many years ago at the Renaissance Fair, going and seeing a tarot card reader who
Mm.
said, in your future, you're either going to be an attorney or a police officer because I see you arguing a lot. And I mean, she got the arguing part right. Like, that was a pretty good read.
So Todd, you mentioned that you're not focused on growth. You're focused on quality and being more strategic. When did you make that sort of change or come to that conclusion that, gosh, why are we just trying to like feed the monster and do growth? And let's just step back, go for quality. How'd you come to that conclusion?
Yeah, there's a handful of answers to that, but it started with really intelligent business people from outside our trade, like Mike St. John, who I mentioned, having us really look at the numbers and see what it costs to do the things that we like to do. And I'm not here to make a big profit, but I do have bills to pay, right? And when you looked at how expensive it was to provide service,
Hmm.
uh, I don't want to be out there chasing razor thin margins, because we look at it and we're like, well, when you open up in new places, usually it's driven by warranty.
Right.
And warranty, has a very specific amount that they are willing to pay for things. It's a boardroom decision, not based on the cost you're doing business. And we looked at the companies that did a lot of it and said, you know, what do their businesses look like? What do their employees look like? And it's a revolving door. It's the companies that we go behind, you know, because they didn't fix it right. Because they can fix 80% of the stuff perfectly with no
Right.
trouble. But the complex 20%, you know, they just abandon. They say somebody else will figure it out. And they paid, you know, straight hourly to their technicians, and they whip them. And I don't want to run that kind of company, right? Like, if you want to lead from the front, you probably don't want to do it inside a mine.
That's right. That's right. Well, that's great. And I think that's a good lesson for everybody to think about. Stay true to the quality. I think that's a great lesson. Well, Todd, I can't thank you enough for being part of Shaping Thought today. You are definitely a leader that is leading the appliance service industry and defining it by being so innovative with what you are doing. So, no, I just want to say thank you for being here today.
I appreciate you having me, and I wish we could spend more time talking about you and all the cool things that you've done and the things that your company's done for our company. But you know, there's only so many hours in the day.
I know, exactly. Well, thank you for listening to Shaping Thought today. And if you liked what Todd had to say, the best way to say thank you is to subscribe or like the podcast. And if you have more questions for Todd, send them to shapingthought@philosophycommunication.com. And I dare you to try and stump him. He is impossible to outwit. I try to, and he always gets me every single time. So until then, keep shaping thought.